Hello, welcome back to Out on That Line podcast. And yes, we are going to do another review for you this week. I am Jeff with my co-host, as always, Alex. Alex, how you doing this week?
Oh shit, I forgot to change hats. I better do that quick. Guys, we'll figure it out in the edit. I'm doing well, Jeff. How are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. And it'll be a nice quick cut in that edit. I'm looking forward to your prowess behind the computer screen there, Alex. And the review we're going to be doing this week is an artist requested by none other than wife of the pod, Marla. And that artist is Slayyyter. And the album name has nothing to do with wife of the pod, but the album name is Worst Girl in America. Now, the artist Slayyyter, billed as singer-songwriter when I was doing my research. I think if you listen to this album, that is a loose definition, but my goodness, what an interesting and fun album this was. What was your familiarity with Slayyyter before this, Alex?
It's so funny. I was about to say absolutely none, but that would be a lie because somehow when this album came out, so like every Friday I'll go through on Spotify and be like, what looks interesting? Who do I know? What album artwork looks appealing? Kind of go through and see like what's what. And this did not look like my usual fare, but I said, you know what? This is about expansion and growing as a person. So I'm going to give it a shot. And I listened to it while I was at the gym and I was like, this is sizzling. This is really fueling this workout. And so really liked it and was like, yeah, file that one for later. And then when you brought it up and you were like, wife of the pod really wants us to do this episode. I was like, oh, that sounds familiar. And then I looked at it and I'm like, I have heard this and I would love to talk about this. And so I've listened to it a bunch more since then. And I think there are a lot of interesting avenues that we can take with this discussion because we're looking at another artist that came super close to quitting music. Like we've talked about people like Mitski or back in the day, No Name, where it's like these people who get so burnt out on expectation or commercialism or the grind of the industry or negative feedback. Mental health begins to suffer. You fall out of love with the thing in the first place. So Slayyyter, whose real name is Catherine Grace Garner, we're going to call her Slayyyter or Slay or Slayyyter Gator, was falling out of love with the music making process. And so this was another album that is a reclamation of artistry. It was originally intended to be like the punctuation point on her career, not making more music after this, but it reignited her love. And I think that comes through on every single aspect of this album. There's some kind of like, I would call this, she would say pop, because she's very influenced by, as crazy it is to say if you've heard the album, people like Britney Spears. For me, it's more indie sleaze is kind of how I feel about it. There's a distinctly 2000s aesthetic that reminds me of like, late early period Charlie XCX. A lot of energy and really steering into a like Y2K nostalgia. We're pretty well past the 80s. We're even moving past the 90s. We're getting into the 2000s now. And I think it's provided a lot of interesting fodder for music like this. So I'm curious how you and wife of the pod found it and what your experience is.
So, wife of the pod, so sister-in-law of the pod, we'll just call her Val. She is like loves Charlie XCX, like was a big fan of like Sophie. I think was that the artist name?
So Sophie Tucker?
Yes. Yeah. So like big fan of that, like very much that like indie sleaze, skewing more on like the electronic side, like loves Lana Del Rey. Like her Instagram name is literally based on Lana Del Rey. Is like, so that's how much she loves that style of music. And so my wife has always like dabbled in that kind of music as well. And so we have like the Brat album on vinyl, like we've done Charlie XCX episodes, so it's like that stuff I've kind of dipped a toe into as well. She knew about Slayyyter probably just from some of the podcasts and stuff that she listens to. She's very tapped into the LGBTQ plus like scene and kind of what music they're into and all that kind of. So she very much like gets made aware of this, of probably a side of the music industry that I just generally am not too in touch with. And once in a while, there's a bridge that gets built, and I find out about an artist like Slayyyter. And so she had played this album for me a few weeks ago, and was like, "Hey, you guys should do this album," because I was bopping. Like I forget where we were driving to, but I was grooving. And this album sounded to me like in a coming of age movie, like when the kid goes to a place they're not supposed to be. Like this is the music that's playing. Like when they go to that club with the older kids and like they see a side of life that their parents have warned them about, like this is the music that they're listening to. So it's funny to hear Slayyyter say that, like someone like Britney Spears, who has like definitely had some, I would assume she's more interested in like the Slave for You Britney Spears more than like the Baby One More Time Britney Spears. Like I feel like there's probably a pretty distinct, or like toxic Britney Spears, or work bitch like that. Like I think there's a definite side of Britney Spears that you hear a lot more in this, because I don't know what this has anything to do with like the Baby One More Time or like those first two Britney Spears albums. There is just so much going on in this album. It sounds like somebody about to have an absolute mental meltdown, not just a mental breakdown, like a mental meltdown. It sounds like things are about to go off the rails, like basically throughout this entire album. And while I normally love to get that from my punk and metal music, like I also like getting that from pop music, because it can get very boring. Like there's some, like pop music is catchy for a reason, because it's easy to digest, it's easy to listen to, it's easy to understand. And then you get pop music like this, where it has those same elements, like it's using the same instrumentation, the same kind of like time signatures or what have you, like catchy choruses, things like that. But there is a much like darker side to it. Like it feels like this is music from like Cyberpunk 2077. This is not music for like coming of age in 5th and 6th grade. It's like bright and sunshiny out. This is like you got in with the wrong group of friends, and this is now the music that you listen to. The idea of like using the $, like basically anywhere there's an S in any of these song titles, I think there's just such an emphasis on like this character of Slayyyter, and really just putting forth this idea that this is like almost like a grimy experience. And I love that. It's like, it's a very punk version of like dance music.
Yeah, aesthetically, you get some of that kind of sleazy, like we're in a slimy tunnel and there's like rave music playing and people are smoking weed and drinking beer and like skateboarding. And it's, it does have a very kind of interesting, kind of queasy aesthetic to it, that I think works perfectly with it actually melds perfectly with some of the, like, I don't know if you would call it late stage Britney Spears. I'm not sure when the last time she released an album was, but like everything you hit upon, like the toxic, where it was kind of breaking away from, that initial image. People might argue that with something like Baby One More Time, it's like, well, it was always like a one of those weird pop things they do where they sexualize, a teenager. Very not great, gang. And so then like it kind of creates this like necessity to break out of that and be like, oh, now I'm a woman. It's okay to sexualize me. So like that period of Britney Spears, I think shines through on something like Gas Station.
Mm-hmm.
That's got like a distinctly hyper pop sensibility and sound to it, but that like vocally especially, and like the melody for it, like you can hear at the gas station, you can hear Britney Spears doing that. It is a very, very weird mashup of like hyper pop, like new metal. It's very industrial, it's dancey. There is a lot going on from song to song. And on top of that, a lot of vulnerability. Like one thing you can say about pop is a lot of it can be pretty surface level in terms of the discussion points and the lyrical material. This felt real on a level of like Wednesday Bleeds or Possum Rock, Cigarettes at Sunset, where we're seeing like very like lyrics that are very informed by experience and come across confidently based in same. It's very below the neck authentic. They felt it. They lived it. They felt it, and it came through in the writing. And don't get me wrong, I love Sabrina Carpenter, but you listen to House Tour a million times, and you flip the same stone. How do you keep an idiot busy? You flip the same stone over like 100 times. What are you supposed to do with the song at that point? Like, it stops even being an earworm. You're less apt to go back to it. This is an album that, because I went back and listened to it so many times, I kind of bumped on different aspects of it that I appreciated. And it also was very healing for me in terms of nudging me towards dance pop, hyper pop, electronica, and dance music. Again, like, I came around on Brat, and this is kind of part of a renaissance for me. There's still stuff I don't like. I didn't think like FKA Twigs was that interesting to me, but you get something like this, and it's very healing in terms of helping you access a genre that you didn't really ever think would be for you. And I'm kind of glad that I feel that way, because this was such a healing album for her, and you get that sense. Like, this is very much someone throwing everything at the wall and seeing what sticks, having a cohesive vision, but also not being afraid to be like, what would happen if I did this? And what would happen if I did this on top of it? What would happen if I made this like distinctly Midwestern, kind of like sad, regretful lyrical content, and I put like sleazy hyper pop on top of it? What would that sound like? And the result is great. It sounds great.
Yeah, and I think, as much as people are probably going to mostly pay attention to like how like hype this album is, and like how danceable this album is, and like that it is extremely well produced. Like, it sounds so frenetic. It sounds like it's about to go off the rails all the time, but it's very cohesive. And I think that thing is, there's a theme throughout this whole album. But if you go in and you read the lyrics, like, I'm not saying this is not like Masters of War by Bob Dylan, I feel like we haven't referenced that in a long time, but it's extremely good for what you normally get out of what you consider like hyper pop, where it can be like really tough to kind of parse out what the lyrics mean. It's like very much that System of a Down idea of like, well, what do they mean to you? I think there is a very like linear, I don't want to say linear, like there's a very direct way that she does the songwriting. It's a lot of times it is from that like first person perspective, and she is very good at explaining like how things made her feel. I think that's where the difference is, and why that singer-songwriter label probably gets applied to her, even though this is like, when I hear singer-songwriter, I think of like Noah Kahan or Casey Musgraves,
Laurel Canyon.
yeah, like that kind of like someone with a guitar kind of thing, and I don't think of like industrial sounding, where it sounds like somebody's banging on a trash can and using an old Dan Electro guitar that's out of tune to like make some of these noises. And I think the fact that there is a lot of noise, there is a lot of things that if somebody doesn't want to get into this album, like, they're going to be able to find an excuse not to do it. But if you allow yourself to get into this album, I think this is every bit as cohesive. The songwriting is like every bit as good as a lot of the country albums that we do. And not to say like that the songwriting is like akin to country, but I'll bet you if she had decided to write it as a country album instead, a lot of these same lyrics probably work just as well. And I think no matter which way you want to come at this, if all you care about is the music, all you care about is something to dance to, you got everything you need from this album. But if you are someone like me, that like the lyrics matter, the feeling matters, the fact that it was written by a human and that there are like real human feelings coming out behind this stuff, a song like Gas Station is fantastic. If you had taken the music away from that and wrote it as a poem, like, it's a pretty decent poem. And I think that is really where the strength is wherever you think you're going to find a weakness, there just really isn't one there on this album.
I would agree. And again, like, there's things are so varied. And I went back and I listened to a couple things off of Starfucker, which kind of had some of this like sleaze DNA to it and a lot of the theatricality. But it was more, you could tell, while it was embracing like celebrity culture and you know, the nightlife, the glamour, the excess. It felt very tongue in cheek. Like there's a signature kind of audacious humor that I found to Slayyyter. Um, but you kind of sense the beginning of the end here. You're like, this album, like what I listened to off of Starfucker was good. I really enjoyed it a lot, but there's no comparison between that and Worst Girl in America because there's just such unbridled freedom in what she's doing on Worst Girl in America. Um, and there's just like one of the songs I love the most is Unknown Lovers. The pre-chorus is such an it's love, it's love, it's love. I say to myself when he doesn't pick up,
Yeah.
the more that I chase him, the faster he runs. And like you look at lyrics like burn you a CD, I send it across the nation. I call you from a payphone at a what? The old gas station. He's rolling cigarettes up and I'm rolling off his Molly. My friends all fucking hate him. But when has that ever stopped me? Again, specific, relatable. It has that, so like abandoning the Hollywood glamour aesthetic and going back to your roots. You grew up in St. Louis. So this is again that uniquely some of the best stuff that we have listened to on the pod this year so far has been people steering into their geographical roots. Noah Kahn in Vermont, Possum Rock or Cigarettes at Sunset, creating Possum Rock to steer into Appalachia, North Carolina, Wednesday, North Carolina. You know, you get your Ryan Bingham and you get Casey Musgrave steering into Texas and Nashville. And now we have Slayyyter with St. Louis. Like there's a lot of, we've been really lucky to see people putting a lot of their flavor into it in an industry that would really like you to appeal to the greatest number of people. And it doesn't mean that, you know, rock and roll influenced by, like, I guess you could look at something like Ramones, or you could look at The Clash, or you could look at Tragically Hip is a really good example. Tragically Hip was a Canadian band.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it feels like there was resistance in America to like accepting them because it feels like it's this like other scary world. And it's like, if you listen to the music, it is relatable. These experiences translate. So this like instinct for like homogeneity in music, sometimes you're cutting these artists off at the knees. And that's what was happening ostensibly to Slayyyter, was cutting her off at the knees, making her hate her art, making her hate the process of working in this medium that used to bring her so much joy back in the SoundCloud days where she got her start. So it's very distinctly a reclamation. It's steering into geographic and cultural identity. Here comes the cat to knock all my shit over again. So I'll pass it back to you before we have a catastrophe. But it's very nice to see in real time her rediscovering her love for music by doing what she wants.
And I think there is so much to be said about this like geographical idea that you were mentioning. There's so much to be said about that. And I think what it comes from is like writing from a place that you know, and I think if you do that, that is such a solid foundation that you can go anywhere you want, like whatever style of music you're making from that, as long as you start with what you know and what actually means something to you. And you don't try to write in a way that you're not trying to put on a different character that you know nothing about. There's some artists that can do that, but I feel like there is a lot more that have tried and failed to do that, like that have tried to, become something that they just aren't, or that they try to fulfill an expectation that other people have of them that they don't have of themselves. And that's when you get music that sounds empty. That's when you get stuff that's very unpunk. That's when you get things that are just, you can't fake authenticity. Like that is really the name of the game. Like, and I think with an album like this, with music like this, I think what you expect is it just to be dance music. And if that's all you want it to be, that's all you need to get out of this. And it hits perfectly for that. But if you want an album where the lyrics matter and where you can find some things to relate to, like if you've ever tried to impress somebody that you shouldn't, there's something for you on this album. If you've ever been disappointed in yourself because you didn't meet the expectations that maybe other people had for you or that you had for yourself, there's something on this album for that. Now, whatever genre of music that is doesn't matter because there is something to relate to on this album. Now, maybe the hyper pop stuff is like too much for you and it rattles your brain the wrong way. But if you can't find lyrically something to relate to on this album, then you're probably not a real person. You might not have done the exact things that she's talking about on this album, but everybody's had that experience where you really cared about somebody or you wanted to impress them and they barely knew who you were. And that feeling of emptiness that you get from that is something I think we all understand. And I think her ability to channel those feelings into this like completely off the wall, this completely batshit sounding album is what a true artist is. And I'm glad, I wasn't really aware of her at all before this album. I didn't know anything about her SoundCloud experience before this or why she was possibly thinking about leaving the industry, but I'm glad she stuck around because if she had, I probably never would have heard who Slayyyter is. Probably never would have heard that artist in my life. But I'm glad that I heard this album because when it comes to like hyperpop, I think I actually like this better than Brat. And I think Brad is hailed as like one of the finest examples of that, I think, that people have. So for me, this album is a strong 9 out of 10.
First of all, we're gonna put this little bastard on blast.
Oh, you gotta
say hello, make your debut.
This album is for the furballs.
Oh, the fur babies love it. Yeah, you're not so fucking content to be on the show now, are you? You little prick. Sending hair up. I did not ask for you. You showed up. Oh, she looks genuinely hurt. I feel bad about that. Anyway, thank you for that digression. Yeah, I think for all the reasons that we've talked about, this authenticity, this strive to reclaim the thing that she once loved and kind of felt slipping away, we wound up just getting something that doesn't really sound like anything else that's out there. Like when you said that you might prefer this to Brat, I'm inclined to agree because I think it took more genre chances than Brat did. Brat was pretty straightforward for what it did, like innovative and very enjoyable, but pretty straightforward in terms of what it was trying to accomplish and the sound that Charlie XCX had settled into. And that's great, but I feel like Slayyyter took a lot of chances here because what's there to lose, right? At this point, you've had industry success. It's the Frank Zappa thing. We haven't mentioned Zappa in a while either. It's the Frank Zappa thing where like he was so talented, he could have made a pop album and it probably would have done gangbusters, but that was not interesting to him. So to see an artist put themselves out there and do something that is interesting to them and unique to them, it shows. You can tell when someone's fulfilling an obligation. You can tell when someone is putting their heart and soul out there. Sometimes it works and it's good. Sometimes, like you get like a Haley Williams or Casey Musgraves divorce album that you're too close to, and it therefore doesn't really, it somehow in being like as below the neck authentic as possible in that experience, something about it doesn't click and doesn't really ring true. And that's hard to explain. But I feel like on this album, Slayyyter like found herself again and found her love for music again. And ostensibly is not going anywhere and is going to continue in this vein. And we'll see. We'll see if it's more like this. If so, I'm pleased. Keep that, 2000s Y2K sleazy aesthetic going. I think that's great. If you find new dimensions that you feel like chasing down, that's great too. Because this is part of like my kind of journey back into electronic and hyperpop and all that. Again, what's been kind of my pet issue this year on the pod is sameness. Some of the songs blend into one another a little more than the others. And then there are some killer standouts. Brittany Murphy at the end, like emotionally, that one hits you right in your nougaty little core. So I think there are plenty of home runs on this. If there's a little bit of sameness to me, that is what takes it from a 10 to a 9. I'm also a 9.
Wow, that is a strong debut for Slayyyter on the Out on That Line podcast. 2 9s out of 10. When it comes to like pop music, this is absolutely one, folks. I think if you want something to dance to, like, this is fantastic album. If you just want some good lyrics, also fantastic album. And we've done, we talked about Charlie XCX. I think there's a couple of Charlie XCX albums that we've done on this podcast. Where can they find those, Alex?
It's so interesting that you bring that up, Jeff, because, we really have plumbed the depths of the electro pop singer-songwriter and the country singer-songwriter. We've touched on metal. We've touched on rap and hip hop. We've covered important artists that everybody knows. We've covered underground phenomena that people may have never heard of. We've covered crap. We've absolutely tromped through crap in our quest to find something that lights us up and is worth sharing with the people at youtube.com/C/out on that line. I'll tell you what's not crap is the amount of videos that we have made. It is hundreds of videos. I believe over 400.
Oh yeah.
That's fucking nuts. And yes, we've been at this for years. But guess what? These video essay people that are like, let me tell you why Aladdin is actually about class politics. Yeah, okay, whatever. That's fine. You put a lot of work into it and you're very proud of it. And like, we all get it. And, here's your fucking parade. But the truth in the matter is we shoot from the hip with emotion. We didn't have to sit here and think. We didn't have to cerebrate and like rack our brains to come up with some highfalutin interpretation of what should be so obvious to anyone that listens to this. Our whole thing is not to like educate you. It's to please you. Okay? We want to slide right down your throat. You ever eat Domino's? Domino's pizza, it's so bad but so good. It's warm and gooey. It's like eating your own insides. And that's kind of the experience that we strive to bring to you. Is it feels like something you shouldn't be doing, but God, does it feel so right? And if you like that feeling, if you want to keep eating your own gooey entrails with us, you have to subscribe to the channel, click the bell so that you get notifications every time we put out a new piece of content. Hit the thumbs up to like the video. You can hype the video and also the comments. That is where you leave potentially the most important part of the process. You tell us what you thought of the episode. You tell us what you thought of the album. We would like to hear more about what people think about these albums. Like when we get notifications of comments that are people saying like, this is my album of the year. This is great. Not enough people are listening to this. Yes, manja, more of this, please. We love that. We love debate. We embrace debate. We love love. So if you love an album, we want to hear about it. If you have suggestions for things that we should do, we'll do it. If you have hatred in your heart and you need to air it to someone, please don't be racist, sexist, Islamophobic, or anything else. But if you just want to get, garden variety mad at two whites, we're here to absorb that for you. Okay? We can be that. We can do that for you at youtube.com/C/out on that line. Also on Spotify.
That was wonderful. And folks, if you don't subscribe, dog gets it. Till next time.